Over the weekend, I was catching up on my podcast, and there was an NPR one that stopped me in my tracks because it was a prime example of exactly why young people are turning more to social media than to traditional news. Now, I consider myself an NPR devotee, but their latest episode on Trump and crypto was shockingly unresearched, as if they assume that their entire audience doesn't know a thing about crypto. So they might as well make up a bunch of stuff to recycle Trump outrage. The result was a ton of fake news about crypto that any young person would know was false on its face. If NPR had had a young adult tune into this episode because they thought, my parents are always raving about how great NPR is. Let me give it a try this time. But instead of analysis, what they hear is fiction after fiction. You better believe that they're going to tune out that episode. And not only that, they're not going to trust the other things that NPR is talking about. So let's unpack this.
Today on the show, how President Trump's business interests and policies are intersecting. Stephen, let's start with this. The president has launched his own crypto exchange and his own meme coin. So I want you to just break that down for us initially, if you would. What is a crypto exchange and what is a meme coin?
Okay, let's just stop right there. Right out the gates, they're starting with fiction number one. There is no crypto exchange. At best, World Liberty Financial has launched a token that they say someday will become a functioning protocol, which is not a crypto exchange. So if you want to analogize this in layman's terms, it's like they've got a gift card to a particular store. What they didn't do is build an entire shopping mall. And anyone who knows a little bit about crypto knows that.
And people are buying these essentially as investment products, right? And that's their hope.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, this is not a typical investment like you would think of investing in a company and hoping it does well and the stock price goes up.
Now they're talking about this as an investment product. Which is it? Did they buy a crypto exchange or did they buy an investment product? This is intellectual laziness. Definitely people are speculating on these meme coins, which you and I should understand as being hype coins, right? They're just based on hype. But no one's pretending otherwise. That's why they're called meme coins. It's like buying a lottery ticket. You know you're going to lose money, but there's a chance you could make a lot of money. And NPR is just clutching its pearls like they've uncovered this big scandal.
Ask if he was profiting from the presidency through crypto, and this is what he had to say.
I'm not profiting from anything. All I'm doing is, I started this long before the election. I want crypto. I think crypto is important because if we don't do it, China's going to.
So, Stephen, there are these questions about what people are getting for this product, aside from...
Wait, what? They're just going to go and move off of that? That is actually the story there, right? Let's unpack, what does Trump mean by if we don't do it, China will do it? What, China's going to issue a bunch of meme coins? No, China's not going to issue a bunch of meme coins. What China is doing is launching a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. And there are real national security concerns when it comes to that. Trump is being flippant about it and trying to conflate two issues. NPR is not acting honestly here because they gloss over the really important policy issue to just continue on this charade as if Trump making himself available to the highest bidder is a news story unique to crypto. What China's doing is a real geopolitical story, what that means for our own national security and how to place it within the world of the crypto ecosystem, which they clearly do not understand. There is one time when the NPR team does actual research and brings up the Pew Research survey data about crypto users in the United States, which is a very important survey. Let's listen.
A Pew survey from last October estimates nearly 1 in 5 U.S. adults invest in crypto, with similar shares of Democratic and Republican-leaning voters doing so. They are predominantly younger and male, smack dab in Trump's prime demographic that he did significant outreach to during the election.
Wait, that is not actually what the data says. Here's the data. What the data tells us is 17% of Americans hold crypto. And then it breaks down those Americans by demographic. But it doesn't tell us how much of any particular demographic makes up the entire US population. So it's not true that crypto holders are primarily made out of young men. What is true is that young men hold crypto orders of magnitude higher than the rest of the population, and orders of magnitude higher than young women. NPR goes on to talk about how Trump targeted that particular demographic of young men. But another way to think about it is, it's also how Democrats pushed away young men. Here, let me play one more clip for you.
And the other ironic thing about this is that the crypto industry was really looking forward to being legitimized through regulation. They wanted Congress to recognize them as a legitimate industry, not just an industry that laundered money or was a front for criminals, which is what the crypto reputation was.
Among who is that the crypto reputation? Among people who've never owned crypto. So, right, like these are the people who are most wary of crypto probably. Their biggest concern when it comes to crypto is its unstable value, its volatility, not this reputation for money laundering. So NPR is just making up a reputation that it is itself buying into, but it's not based on facts. This is what's so harmful. Going back to that Pew Research survey, we know that 42% of young men own or hold crypto. 17% of young women also own or hold crypto. And you know what else? Is that even if they don't, they are hanging out with these same young men. And I can promise you that not all these young women and these young men, even if they themselves don't hold crypto, think that all their friends are a bunch of money laundering fronts for crime bosses. And so if they hear this episode and they hear NPR just leveling all these false accusations against anyone who holds crypto, naturally they would not trust traditional media. No surprise. You wouldn't either. Now, here's the thing. NPR could have done an excellent episode of crypto and Trump without compounding a bunch of journalistic mistakes. They really could have explored the emoluments issue, which I'm sure they are experts on, this old law written into the Constitution, and then discussed how the World Liberty Financial Token by design is not sold to the average US citizen. So by design, it is really for foreigners. That seems to be on its face a clear violation of the emoluments clause. They could have explored this China and crypto and national security and what Trump is not doing about that. Hype coins, meme coins, shit coins, whatever you want to call it, they're not going to address how to counteract what China is doing with its CBDC. So the real travesty is that they are delegitimizing themselves. And while they may very well be experts about very important issues about the rule of law, providing historical context about what the parliamentarian does, if they won't engage on issues that young adults are knowledgeable about with integrity, young adults are going to continue tuning them out. And at someday, young adults are going to be in their 30s and 40s, and they'll have forever been lost because they will have forever tuned them out. And that's the same take-home point for Democrats, which I spelled out in an earlier video.